You know that feeling when you're scrolling through your banking app. Maybe it's a Tuesday night, you're tired, and you're just looking at the numbers. And you start doing that mental math thing? We all do it. You start calculating how much you need to finally, honestly, just stop. Not stop living, but stop worrying. You think, if I could just hit that one number, everything would change. And for almost everyone, for decades, that number's been the big one. The 7 figures. $1 million. It's got a ring to it, doesn't it? It sounds like the finish line. It sounds like a silk robe, a house with a view, and never having checked the price of organic blueberries ever again. But honestly, the closer you get to it, or the more you talk to people who have actually crossed that threshold, the more you realize that the millionaire we were promised in 1995 or even 2005 doesn't really exist anymore. It's like a ghost. You reach out to touch it, and your hand just passes right through. My name is Nick, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, financial psychology, and why some people seem to effortlessly build wealth, while others stay stuck in the same financial patterns for decades, even when they're making good money. I've spent years obsessing over why the math of wealth rarely matches the feeling of wealth. See, we've been sold this idea that $1 million is the point where you become rich. But today, in this economy, $1 million is, well, it's a lot of things. It's a massive achievement, don't get me wrong. But it's also a confusing mid-tier transition point that often leaves people feeling more anxious than they were when they had nothing. Because once you have it, you realize how quickly it can disappear. By the end of this, I want to pull back the curtain on what that number actually buys you in 2026, why it feels so different than we expected, and how you should actually be measuring your life if you want to truly feel secure. Because, spoiler alert, the math is the easy part. It's the psychology that'll get you. Imagine you finally hit that milestone. You've worked 15, 20 years. You've saved. You've invested in your index funds. You've skipped the flashy cars. You look at your net worth statement, and there it is, $1 million. But here's the thing, and this is something nobody tells you. You didn't get to that $1 million by living like a monk. Usually, by the time someone hits $1 million, their income has scaled up significantly. And when your income scales, your floor for what is acceptable in life scales with it. You aren't living in that crappy apartment with the radiator that clanks all night anymore. You're in a house with mortgage, a house with a roof that, coincidentally, decided to start leaking the same month you hit your goal. Basically, $1 million used to be set for life money. In the 1980s, you could put $1 million in a high-yield savings account or government bonds, sit back, and collect $80,000 to $100,000 a year in interest. You were the king of the neighborhood. Today, if you're following the 4% rule, which is a standard safe withdrawal rate for retirees, that $1 million only gives you $40,000 a year. Think about that. $40,000. That's not yacht and caviar money. That's, I hope the water heater doesn't break, money in most major cities. If you have a family, $40,000 a year is poverty adjacent in places like San Francisco, New York, or even Austin these days. So, the first shock of the $1 million milestone is realizing that you've reached the summit of the mountain, only to realize you're standing on a plateau and there's a much higher peak right behind it. I remember talking to a friend who hit this number recently. He called me and he sounded depressed. I asked him why, and he said, "Nick, I've worked my whole life for this, but I still feel like I'm one bad month away from a crisis." That's the paradox. Your net worth is high, but your cost of being you has also risen. You've traded the stress of can I pay rent for the stress of can I maintain this entire infrastructure I built? It's a different kind of heavy. And then there's the illiquid trap. When people hear millionaire, they picture a Scrooge McDuck vault filled with gold coins they can dive into. They think it's $1 million in the bank. But in reality, for 90% of people who hit that mark, that $1 million is tied up in things they can't actually spend. Let's break down a typical millionaire next door balance sheet. You got maybe $550,000 in a primary residence, but you still owe the bank half of that. You got $450,000 in a 401k, some equity in the home, maybe $50,000 in cars and furniture. On paper, you're a millionaire. Congratulations. You are the 1%. In reality, you might only have $20,000 in your actual checking account. If you want to go on a luxury vacation, you can't exactly peel off a piece of your roof and hand it to the travel agent. If you want to retire, you can't touch that 401k without massive penalties until you're nearly 60. You are house rich and cash poor. This creates a weird psychological friction. You feel like you should be successful. You feel like you should be able to buy the nice version of everything. But when you look at your checking account after the mortgage and the kids' soccer camp fees come out, it looks remarkably similar to how it looked when you were making half as much money. I actually went through a phase where I was obsessed with my net worth. I had a spreadsheet. I called it the master plan, which sounds way more villainous than it actually was, and I'd update it every Friday. I'd see the number go up because the housing market was crazy, but my daily life didn't change. I was still eating leftovers and worrying about the price of gas. It makes you feel like a fraud. You think, if I'm a millionaire, why am I still stressed about a $200 grocery bill? The answer is liquidity. Net worth is a vanity metric. Cash flow is sanity. We also have to talk about the elephant in the room. Inflation. And I don't just mean the price of eggs going up. I mean the systemic devaluation of what a million actually represents. If you take $1 million from 1980 and adjust it for inflation to today's value, you need about $3.8 million to have the same purchasing power. Let that sink in. To be 1980s rich. You actually need almost $4 million today. When our parent or grandparents talked about the millionaire, they were talking about a level of wealth that is now effectively $4 million. So, when we hit $1 million today, we're actually only about 25% away to the dream we were raised on. It's like we're playing a video game where the difficulty spikes every time we level up. You finally get the millionaire achievement, but the game world just got 4 times more expensive. This is why a lot of people feel like they're running in place. You're doing everything right. Saving 15%, investing, being smart. But the goalposts are mounted on a Ferrari, and they're driving away from you at 60 miles per hour. And it's not just the stuff you buy. It's the big life things. Healthcare, education, housing. Those 3 things have outpaced general inflation by a mile. $1 million doesn't buy a forever home in a good school district in a lot of country anymore. It buys a 3-bedroom fixer-upper with a weird smell in the basement. It's discouraging, honestly. But understanding this is crucial because it stops you from blaming yourself for not feeling rich. It's not a character flaw. It's literally just the math of the 21st century. There's also a weird psychological shift that happens when you hit $1 million. It's called loss aversion. When you have $10,000 and the stock market drops 10%, you lose $1,000. It sucks, but you can make that back in a paycheck or 2. You don't lose sleep over it. But when you have $1 million and the market drops 10%, which happens, pretty much every couple years, you just lost $100,000. That's more than most people make in a year. You just watch a year or 2 of your life's work evaporate in a week because some Fed chairman said something vague about interest rates. Suddenly, your wealth becomes a source of anxiety rather than a source of freedom. You become obsessed with protecting it. You start checking the markets 3 times a day. You get conservative. You stop taking the risks that actually got you to the million in the first place. Basically, you become a servant to the number. You're so afraid of falling back into the 6-figure category, of losing that second comma, that you stop living. I've seen people who have $1.2 million, and they are more stressed than they were when they had $100,000. Why? Because now they have something to lose. When you're broke, you're invincible because you're already at the bottom. But once you're a millionaire, you have a status to maintain. You have a target on your back. It reminds me of a guy I met at a conference. He was a multimillionaire, but he spent the whole dinner complaining about the cost of the wine. He wasn't being cheap. He was genuinely distressed by the waste. He had spent so long optimizing his life to reach a goal that he had lost the ability to actually enjoy the result. He was a millionaire on paper, but a pauper in spirit. You don't want to be that guy. Trust me, we're entering the era of the middle-class millionaire. This is a group of people who have the big number, but they still have to work. They still have to worry about their boss. They still have to commute. In the old days, $1 million meant financial independence. It meant you were done. You could go move to an island and paint watercolors for the rest of your life. Today, $1 million is just supercharged security. It means you won't go homeless if you get fired. It means you can pay for your kids' college without a predatory loan. It means you can retire at 65 instead of 75. But it doesn't mean freedom. This creates a massive identity crisis. You feel like you've made it, but your daily reality hasn't changed. You still have to answer to Steve from middle management. You still have to ask for permission to take a Friday off. This is where frustration sets in. You realize that $1 million is the new $250,000. It's enough to be comfortable, but it's not enough to be opt-out rich. Opt-out rich, where you can truly walk away from anything you don't want to do, is now closer to $5 million or $10 million. And look, I know how this sounds. Oh, poor baby, you only have $1 million. It sounds like the ultimate first world problem. And in a way, it is. But pain is relative. The stress of realizing the finish line you've been running toward for 20 years was actually just a hydration station is a real psychological blow. It can lead to burnout because you think, if $1 million didn't fix my life, what will? Do I have to do this for another 20 years to hit $5 million? Then there's the sneaky one, your friends. As you build wealth, your social circle tends to shift. It's not always intentional. It just happens. You start hanging out with people from your new neighborhood or people you meet through higher-level work functions. The problem is, millionaire friends don't hang out at Applebee's. They want to go to the $150 a head sushi spot. They want to do the group trip to Cabo. They want to go in on a fractional jet membership or whatever the 2026 version of that is. There's this social tax that comes with hitting a certain net worth. To stay in the room, you have to spend more. If you don't, you feel like an outsider. If you do, you're eating into the very wealth you worked so hard to build. I've seen this happen so many times. Someone hits $1 million, buys the Millionaire house, and then realizes they can't afford to be friends with their neighbors. Their neighbors have $5 million. They're playing a different game. It's the classic big fish, small pond versus small fish, big pond dilemma. When you have $1 million, you're a very big fish in a middle-class pond. You feel great. You're the hero. But as soon as you jump into the wealthy pond, you're a minnow. You're the poor friend. And that's a dangerous place to be for your bank account. Because the easiest way to lose $1 million is trying to look like you have 10 million. This part gets a bit heavy, but we have to go there. How did you get that million? For most people, it wasn't a lottery ticket. It was a grind. It was decades of 50-hour weeks. It was stress. It was missed bedtimes with the kids. It was, I'll go to the gym tomorrow for 10 years straight. By the time many people hit the 7-figure mark, they look in the mirror and realize they traded their best physical years for a number on a screen. And here's the kicker. You can't buy those years back. There's a famous saying, a healthy man wants 1,000 things, but a sick man only wants one. I know guys who are worth $5 million, but they have the blood pressure of a pressurized steam engine, and they haven't had a hobby since the Bush administration. They've reached the goal, but they've lost capacity to enjoy it. Their net worth is high, but their life worth is struggling. If you hit $1 million, but you're too exhausted to travel, or you've alienated your spouse, or your kids don't really know you, was $1 million? Or was it just an expensive mistake? We tend to value money as the ultimate currency. But time is the only currency you can't earn more of. Once it's spent, the shop is closed. The real trick, and this is something I'm still trying to master myself, is figuring out how to build $1 million without bankrupting your soul. It's about enough. Knowing when the marginal utility of an extra dollar is lower than the value of an extra hour of sleep or a walk in the park. And we can't forget that wealth is leaky. If your $1 million is in traditional 401k or IRA, which is where most Americans hold their wealth, that money isn't actually yours. It's a joint account with the IRS. When you start taking that money out in retirement, You're going to pay income tax on it. Depending on where you live and what the tax brackets look like in the future, you could easily lose 20%, 30%, or even more to taxes. $1 million in a 401k is actually about $750,000 in spending power. Then there's the hidden tax of maintenance. If that million includes your home equity, you're paying property taxes, insurance, and repairs on that wealth every single year. Basically, wealth is like trying to carry water in a wicker basket. You have to keep pouring more, and just to keep the level steady. If you stop working and just sit on your million, the combination of taxes, inflation, and life will erode it faster than you think. This is why the number is so deceptive. We think of a million as a solid block of gold. In reality, it's more like a block of ice. It's melting all the time. Unless you have a way to keep it frozen through active investing or ongoing income, it's a temporary state. This realization is often the moment people realize they can't actually stop working yet. It's the one more year syndrome. You hit a million, you see the ice melting, and you say, okay, maybe if I get to 1.5 million, I'll be safe. Then 2 million. It never ends unless you change the way you look at the ice. There's also the complexity dividend. M.O. money, M.O. problems isn't just a lyric. It's a law of physics. When you have $5,000, your financial life is simple. You have a bank account, maybe a credit card. When you have $1 million, your life gets complex. You have to worry about asset allocation, tax loss harvesting, estate planning, and insurance. Suddenly, managing your money becomes a part-time job. You're not just living your life, you're managing an estate. I've found that for many people, the sweet spot of happiness isn't at the highest level wealth, but at the lowest level of complexity. There's a massive freedom in having a simple life. The more stuff and assets you own, the more those things own you. Every rental property is a potential midnight phone call about a broken toilet. Every stock is a potential reason to panic during a market crash. The $1 million mark is often a point where complexity starts to outweigh the benefits of the money. You're rich enough to have problems, but not rich enough to pay a full-time staff to solve them for you. You're in the do-it-yourself wealth phase, which is honestly kind of exhausting. Finally, we have to talk about how $1 million looks through the lens of other people. We live in the era of social media where everyone is a founder or a digital nomad living in a villa. When you're grinding your way to $1 million, you compare yourself to the person who has nothing. You feel great. But the moment you hit $1 million, your brain stops comparing you to the person with nothing and starts comparing you to the person who has $10 million. You see the guy who made $2 million on a crypto trade in a weekend, and suddenly your 20 years of diligent saving feels pathetic. You think, I did it the hard way and I'm still behind. This is a comparison trap. Wealth is an absolute number. It's a relative one. If you live in a neighborhood where everyone has $500,000 and you have $1 million, you're the king of the hill. If you move to a neighborhood where everyone has $5 million, you're the poor neighbor. Your $1 million hasn't changed. Its purchasing power hasn't changed. But your happiness has plummeted because your relative standing has shifted. This is the most important lesson I've learned about money. You will never have enough if your definition of enough is more than the other guy. There will always be another guy. Even the billionaires are looking at the guys with more billions and feeling inadequate. It's a race with no finish line. The only way to win is to stop running and realize that the $1 million was never the point. So, after all that, am I saying $1 million is worthless? Absolutely not. I don't want to be that out-of-touch guy. Having $1 million is an incredible achievement. It's a shield against the world. It's a sleep better at night fund. It's a huge win, but it's not the ending. We've been conditioned to think of $1 million as the moment the credits roll, and we live happily ever after. But in 2026, $1 million is really just the beginning of a new chapter. It's the point where you stop worrying about survival and start worrying about significance. If you're watching this and you're on that path, maybe you're at $10,000 or $100,000, or maybe you're at $900,000 and you're closing in, I want you to take a breath. Don't wait for the seven figures to start living. Don't wait for the number to give you permission to be happy, or to go on that hike, or to spend time with your family. Because I can tell you, from everyone I've talked to who has crossed that line, the number doesn't change who you are. It just makes you more of who you already were. If you're an anxious person with $50,000, you're going to be a very anxious person with $1 million. If you're a generous person with $50,000, you're going to be a legendary person with $1 million. The money is just fuel. It's an accelerant, but you're the one steering the car. If you want to feel rich, don't just focus on the net worth column of your spreadsheet. Start building your life worth. Invest in your health, because $1 million can't buy a new back or a heart that isn't stressed to the limit. Invest in your relationships, because $1 million is a very lonely number if there's no one to share the view with. Invest in your skills, because the ability to earn is actually more valuable than the money you've already earned. The world has changed. The millionaire dream of 1985 is dead, but a new dream is taking its place. The dream of autonomy. The dream of being able to say no to things that drain you. The dream of spending your days doing work that matters with people you love. You don't need $1 million to start doing that. You might need $100,000. You might need $500,000. But the goal isn't the comma. It's the freedom the comma represents. So honestly, keep going. Save. Invest. Be smart. But don't forget to look up from the spreadsheet every once in a while. The million is just a number. Your life is the actual prize. Anyway, that's what's been on my mind lately. It's a lot to chew on, I know. But hopefully, it helps you feel a little less crazy the next time you look at your bank account and feel that weird mix of, I'm doing great, and why don't I feel richer? You're not doing it wrong. The game just got harder, but you're still in the game. And that's what matters. I'm curious, though, what's your enough number? Not the million we were told to want, but the number where you think you'd actually feel free? Let me know. I try to listen to as many perspectives as I can, and honestly, your take on this always helps me see things I missed. Until next time, take care of your money, but take better care of yourself. Would you like me to create a breakdown of how to calculate your personal freedom number based on your specific lifestyle and goals?